Devotion aura is baseline, and concentration aura, and crusader and red aura? The fuck is that? Man, it brings a tear to my eye. Reminds me of the good old days. Except for the bullshit holy power system locking down Light of Dawn. But hey, can win them all. Or enough. Is Holy Paladin safe? Let's check everything that changed for Holy in Shadowlands. We play pretty much all of the specs as we can get our hands on them on our stream at twitch.tv/Marcelian Online. Come check us out. We do keys and, if time permits, raids with viewers as well. And as always, I fall off elevators on a regular basis now. It's a thing. What are you gonna do? First off, what's baseline and what is coming back in the next expansion? Auras are back as God intended them to be, above your action bar. Devotion aura comes with a 3% damage reduction, which in all honesty is about time. The strength of this skill as a talent made it the only valid choice, creating a dead talent row since no other option came even close in value. Clearly the damage reduction has been nerfed to 3% to accommodate the fact that this is now baseline and does not cost a talent. And in raids at least 3% was all you were getting anyway, since the damage reduction was reduced on live the more players the aura was on. Except that now it's only limited to 40 yards around you. Concentration aura made its way back and still feels like a PvP only thing. Kicks and silences are likely never to be a thing that cannot be stopped or avoided in PvE, so the usage of this one will be reserved for arenas and other PvP content. Crusader aura is the same as its original version with 20% mount speed, with usage probably in world content when doing world quests and such. Outside of this, I mean, I'm still secretly hoping we get mounted combat. Maybe for a raid boss or a dungeon. At least paladins and death knights have been mounted fighters in the lore forever. Thinking back at Warcraft 2. What do you think though? Comment down below. Anyhow, lastly, retribution aura. Dear God, what a toilet effect. Hey, I'm sorry if I'm breaking your immersion, but really now? I know the old red aura version was very underused and underpowered to begin with, fair enough. But this aura is super awkward. With the way it's implemented now, you have to actually pop it just before an ally dies to get its effect. And this assuming you know for sure your ally is going to die no matter how much, as a freaking healer, you try to save him or her. Not to mention you are taking away the 3% damage reduction, Devotion aura, from someone that's about to die. Why? Because we are assuming you will be popping this just before people die. Otherwise, if you keep this on, you literally have no aura benefit for you or your group. Not to mention auras are on the GCD, mind you. Can we not have them on the GCD, please? Especially if you are supposed to swap between them to counteract a combat event, supposedly. Turn Evil is coming back as well, and it affects undead, aberrations, and demons. Aberrations, as an effect, was added probably due to BFA that introduced aberrations, and the fact that we might see more and more voidy type creatures in the future, especially now that we are in the Shadowlands. The effect doesn't fear the target, but it disorients it. The target will still flee away. This is not only a very specific paladin crowd control ability, but useful in dungeons as well, and it being a disorient means that it will break on damage instantly. This offers the possibility of stopping a channel or long cast, or simply taking a mob out of the fight for a while, which will come in handy in future Mythic Plus scenarios. Now that we got the easy bits out of the way, Holy Power is a baseline mechanic for Holy Paladins as well, because Holy. Off the bat, I want to say that having a healer with combo point like Builders and Spenders is interesting if executed properly. Now, Hammer of Wrath was added to Holy and generates 1 Holy Power on top of doing its Hammer of Wrathy things. This is again an iconic ability and adds a bit to the offensive playstyle that Holy has developed over the years. It can help in higher level content where every bit of damage matters, and it generating a holy power means you are still maintaining your builder part of your rotation. Shield of the Righteous is also baseline and costs 3 holy powers. Popping it gives you a large chunk of armor for 4.5 seconds and deals AoE damage to targets in front of you. This will make you decently tanky for a short amount of time, and with taunts available, plus the amazing defensives Paladin has, you can pull some tanking weight on your back, temporarily, which I assume was always the intent. I mean, you know, your tank dies, but the boss is close to dying, pop a shield in, a taunt, and a bubble, and maybe you can make something happen for a few seconds. Word of Glory is also baseline for Holy right now, and it costs 3 holy powers to use, but it's single target. Numbers aside, it's the heaviest single target heal, as it should be, being so expensive and all, although the live iteration on Word of Glory, for red at least, is superior in terms of healing and utility. But they couldn't have made it an AoE heal with Light of Dawn right there. Which brings us to Light of Dawn, also costing 3 holy powers to cast. This pretty much shoots the Glimmer build in the foot, with some other things that are locked and loaded and pointed downwards. Otherwise, there is something about Light of Dawn being a holy power spender that doesn't feel right. Maybe because we are coming from BFA, which already introduced a new and very different way to play the spec. Healing your beacon target with Flash of Light and Holy Light will also generate 1 holy power, which I guess it's good, but kind of defeats the purpose of the beacon mechanic. And what do you do if you want to play the beacon mechanic and also generate holy power? Well, that takes you to the next bit of your rotation. Crusader Strike and Holy Shock both generate 1 holy power each. Outside of this, no major changes. Crusader Strike, being what it is, will probably be your fastest holy power generator, while Holy Shock maintains its hybrid effect of damaging or healing your target. There are a few things I'm waiting to see how they play out. For one, what if you are not going to be playing a Shockadin build? How will you generate holy powers? On the surface, the change forces you to go in melee and smash things whether you want it or not. Mostly because both Word of Glory and Light of Dawn do not cost any mana and heal for more than Flash and Holy Light, and are both instant. I suppose juggling the pros and cons of this can and will raise the skill ceiling of the spec, which is always nice. As far as the baseline kit for Holy, the playstyle seems different and not by a small margin. Sure, you press the same buttons, almost, but the way you press them, the way you optimize your rotation will be vastly different. I will retain a healthy dose of skepticism and await further testing from bigger Holy Paladin brains out there in the community. Blessings of the Season is the Ardenwold Covenant ability, and a really interesting ability to say the least. This is the alpha. Numbers are not final, but numbers is all we have for this one. It essentially has 4 major effects with an internal 15 seconds cooldown. So it starts out as one of the blessings going in a rotation, and each blessing lasting for a full minute. Spring buffs your group to deal 10% extra healing and take 10% extra healing. This is clearly valuable on tanks, especially those that have great self-sustain, like Blood Decays or Vengeance Demon Hunters. Will benefit yourself as well, increasing your healing done for a minute, and can even be paired up with cooldowns. Blessing of Summer puts a buff on your group that gives their attacks a high chance to deal extra holy damage. This reminds me of Seal of Righteousness back in the olden days. The current iteration of it seems to be insane in the amount of damage it's outputting. Not sure if it scales with haste or simply has a fixed proc chance per minute. Autumn buffs the group with a 10% cooldown recovery rate. Think of Ineffable Truth. This has universal usage and can work great on cooldown heavy specs, yourself included. And lastly, Blessings of Winter, giving attacks the ability to slow movement speed by 20% and attack speed by 10% of targets. This sounds to be useful in dungeons when your tank needs to kite or have melee attacks less frequently, delaying things like necrotic or just raw damage. You can only have one of these blessings active at a time per group, so multiple paladins with this ability can and will override the other's effect once it's pressed. It can also be paired and used in unison or in conjunction for essentially 1 extra minute for each paladin that uses this for the respective season buff. You can try to fish for a buff, but it will take 45 seconds to reach it if you cycle through the effects on cooldown to get the one that you want back ASAP. Choosing Maldraxxus will give you Vanquisher's Hammer. Popping this guy on a target makes your next Word of Glory also trigger a Light of Dawn, and it's on a 30-second cooldown. Again, numbers aside, the effect alone feels like this will have the most throughput. You'll essentially seal your fate and be a melee healer for max efficiency Light of Dawns, but it will boost your throughput by crazy amounts, giving you a free Light of Dawn every 30 seconds. And by free, like free in every sense of the word. No holy power cost, no GCD cost, and the skills involved are already mana free. Like, okay, I know holy is right now the healer with the least amount of mana problems, which is weird for this to be the case with the current Vanquisher Hammer cost. But goddamn, Word of Glory, Vanquisher's Hammer, and Light of Dawn also free? I suppose Crusader Strike and Holy Shock having a mana cost associated might make all of this balance itself out in the end? We'll have to see. Divine Toll is the Kyrian ability, and for Holy it fires 5 Holy Shocks on up to 5 targets. Obviously these can be either friendly or hostile, and it sounds like this could work with Glimmer the best. And yes, we have Glimmer in Shadowlands, but more on that later. On a 1-minute cooldown, firing 5 Holy Shocks is still pretty amazing in terms of its raw effect. The shocks will be fired supposedly at the 5 closest targets, including yourself, and it won't hit the same target more than once. Currently, it seems that if your selected target is a friendly, it will prioritize friendly targets, and vice versa. Each target hit contributes to 1 holy power being generated. So yeah, you can easily end up with instantly 5 holy powers. Also, if you pop wings, all of them will crit. The interactions are all there so far, and makes for an amazing Covenant ability simply for the raw amount of either healing or damage that you can do. Ashen Hollow is the last on the list and the least in terms of its effect, it seems. This gives you a 4-minute cooldown Consecrate that lasts for 30 seconds. Every 2 seconds it ticks, healing allies and damaging enemies. While inside of it, you can use Hammer of Wrath on any target regardless of their HP percentage. The damage numbers are incredibly small, and this is also on a 4-minute cooldown. 4 minute is very huge and seems like a poorly balanced ability. If the numbers can make it competitive, it can see some pretty cool usage in dungeons with big pools or raids where everyone is stacked. The Hammer of Wrath Bith is a nice addition, giving you 3 to 4 Hammer of Wraths depending on its cooldown, which is again arguably good or insufficient. There are a bunch of talents that moved around and a few new or brought from other specs. The obvious changes are to things like Crusader's Smite that doesn't reduce the cooldown of Light of Dawn since there is no cooldown to reduce, although it could reduce its cost, if you know what I mean. Second Row has been altered entirely. Saved by the Light is the new addition that gives your beacon target a saving grace once they dip below 30%, putting a small absorb on them for almost a Word of Glory's worth. This can only happen once per minute on the same target, meaning you could rotate beacon around to get more value out of it, which seems like a weird thing to have to do, especially since beacon is on the GCD and your target supposedly will proc this quick enough to be worth it. 1, not having it on the tank, and 2, not spreading your heals with it, and 3, not actually casting heals because you are reapplying beacon. So, dead talent? I mean, the alternatives on its row are Judgment of Light, which I am just speculating but has more throughput, and it's baked into Judgment, which you want to cast anyway, meaning it doesn't incur an extra GCD. Not sure about Holy Prism, but could still be better than Saved by the Light. Saved my ass. More like a free Word of Glory per minute if the target dips. And if the target dips every minute, it's either a Blood Decay or Vengeance Demon Hunter, or you or him aren't doing your jobs properly, in which case a free Word of Glory is unlikely to make up for the situation. Fourth Row sees Unbreakable Spirit, Cavalier, and Rule of Law, essentially the old Second Row, but moved down 2 units. 5th row has Divine Purpose changed to accommodate the new playstyle, actually reverting it back to the old Mop and Wad version. Spending Holy Power will give you a 15% chance to make the next Holy Power spending ability free and 20% stronger. This looks to be the fast-paced end game option for more free Words of Glory or Light of Dawns, adding to overall burst healing. Not sure how this stands up against the new Holy Avenger that's, again, the Mop and Wad Holy Avenger, which doesn't give haste anymore. Boo! But instead triples your Holy Power generation for 20 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. The cooldown being raised is clearly a nerf, and the resource effect seems to be aimed at keeping the overall result the same without giving you too much haste that will affect everything else on your bars. Although I'm not 100% sure, I am 90% sure that this is a big nerf to the ability overall. Seraphim is the last option on this row, coming from the protection tree, with this same effect, costing 3 Holy Powers this time. The Protection Live version had some interesting managing to it, since it ate stacks of Shield of the Righteous and was still performing good. You had to choose and plan ahead. Now it's just a pop and forget buff for 15 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. Not as interesting. The next row remained almost the same, with Awakening affecting Word of Glory as well, potentially seeing some play later down the line. Further testing required. Last row sees Glimmer of Light instead of Divine Purpose. Now, I will sound like a broken record, but the damage numbers and healing numbers aside, which seem a bit underwhelming at the moment, our gear in the alpha is also incredibly shit, so this talent will create a different Glimmer build at first glance. You cannot pair it with both Divine Purpose and Holy Avenger now, and the Holy Power system seems to affect it differently. Currently the build seems wonky in comparison to the live version, but we also pretty much have gear templates to work with that provide underwhelming stats and player power, where the haste levels are nowhere near the BFA and what the BFA build requires. I was a strong advocate of including Glimmer in the baseline Holy Kit as a talent, yet I'm not 100% sure how it will perform. Fortunately, it's not against super strong contenders. Virtue is nice and Faith is okay, but neither so far have stood out as the be-all and all cookie cutter options, so that might work well for Glimmer as far as the choice goes. More on this when we have Mythic Plus and Raids out. Red Aura. The effect is actually really paladin-y. No, hear me out. You are a paladin, your friend dies, and you fill yourself with avenging might, popping your wings for a few seconds. Makes sense, but not as an aura. I think making this a baseline passive for all specs would be just fine. Nobody's going to die left and right to make this OP and create a world where you maximize your allies dying so you can get more damage and healing out. And if this is what Blizzard fears, that you would not sack or bop an ally so you could get wings, then why make it an effect to begin with? Maybe make Red Aura reflect back 1 or 2 or 3% of the damage your group is taking. Maybe limit the amount of targets affected as a way to balance its damage output. I mean, this is supposed to be the offensive aura choice when you don't need the defensive benefits of the rest, no? Holy Power spending seems okay. The only thing I would like to see is an offensive choice outside Shield of the Righteous, as long as Blizzard assumes and attests we can play Holy in solo content. Maybe add the effect from the old glyph Harsh Words back into the game. Otherwise, we scratch all of that and go red, because questing takes ages if all I can spend Holy Power on is Shield of the Righteous. Also, the 5 max Holy Power seems a bit awkward and mainly added to accommodate Divine Toll, but maybe this is nitpicking at this point. Outside of this, Holy Paladin has interesting options and potential builds. Still, there's this shaky feeling I have that some of these don't go well with each other, and the balance and nerf of overpowered options will lead to some awkward design choices. What do you think? As the alpha progresses, more and more people get access to and analyze it, and I strongly recommend you check the Hammer of Wrath Discord for more advanced theory crafting and hopefully more questions answered. A special thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel and the content that we do. I'm really excited, guys, because there's a bunch of cool stuff that we will have in store for you, and I cannot keep it in, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Thank you very much for supporting us, and if you, dear viewer, are also interested in supporting our content that we do for you, check the link down below. There's our Patreon link, a merch link, I think, yeah, and maybe there's something for you. Thank you for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.